Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Susan Salt. I'm the curate for the Fellside team. And before I came to join the Fellside team, I was a medic, a doctor, particularly looking at care of the dying patient. But in doing that, I have a lot of skills and knowledge and experience about both managing and listening to people who are distressed and living with uncertainty and anxiety, but also listening to children coping with loss and bereavement and the uncertainty of parents with illness. So I've been asked if I would put together a very short video acknowledging the real complexity of the next few months as schools return and as our youngsters, I think, begin to adjust back to perhaps their more regular routines in life, having had such a disruptive year. There has been much said and written about the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly about the losses that so many people have experienced. Not just the loss of loved ones who have died, not just of COVID, but of other illnesses, but also the loss of routine, the loss of social support networks, the loss of that sense of certainty that today will be an ordinary day, and also that loss perhaps for some people of a sense of who they are because they aren't able to do the things that would normally make them feel alive and themselves. And just as that is something that affects us as adults, it also affects children. But I also want to say that children are incredibly resilient. And they haven't lost a year. Yes, they may have fallen a little bit behind with their academic studies, but they will have gained much from this year. They will have gained time with their family. Some of that time will have been good quality time. Some, yes, will have been challenging and difficult, but they will have gained from learning about the ups and downs of family life and how to live in close proximity with brothers and sisters and parents. They will have lost, yes, contact potentially with their grandparents and their cousins and their aunts and their uncles, but they will also have learnt that you can Zoom and you can FaceTime, and that actually that physical presence for people is really important and not to be taken for granted. I hope too that many of the children will have learnt the value of simple things that can give them pleasure. So the walk around the village, or just stopping and noticing what trees and flowers and birds and the sky are all doing. So I hope that not only have there been losses, there have also been gains. And it's really important to say that, because I think if you read the media, it's all doom and gloom, that there's a whole generation of children who are lost and will never recover. I want to say that's rubbish. Most of our children will bounce back. Most of our children, in fact, don't need to bounce back. They have embraced what's going on. Yes, they have struggled, but they have been resilient, and they will have learnt so much from this, particularly of life skills, and will teach us many lessons in the years to come. But having said all of that, it is true that these have been incredibly difficult times. And I just want to give you some tips and some ways of thinking about how to be alongside your children or your friends' children as we start this slow and hopefully careful process of returning to something like normal routines. Now, I'm aware that I may well be teaching my grandmother to suck eggs, but it's always good to refresh our memories about how to communicate, but particularly how to listen to each other, and particularly to children. So the first thing I would like to say is, when you see your child struggling a bit, they perhaps are not their usual self, or they look a little bit down, ask them. Take the risk to say, you don't seem yourself today. Or, I see that you're quite quiet. Is there anything on your mind? It's not very helpful to say, how are you? Because actually that's one of those things that in communication is an automatic response. If you say, how are you? The answer is, I'm fine. Even if you have your leg hanging off, how are you will often result with the answer, I'm fine. So asking more general and open questions is more helpful. And saying what you see or what you sense means that the person that you're talking to, the child you're talking to, knows that you have noticed, but also can begin to sense that you're ready to hear what they might want to say. So, ask, be brave and ask. Don't rush past, but take the time to say, I've noticed. And then to sit down, if you can. Be on the same level. Even if you've only got 5 minutes, it doesn't take you 2 seconds to sit down and talk. And often these are not conversations that go on for hours and hours, because most of the time kids' concentration spans are not that long, and they want to say something and then they'll want to run off and play, or they'll want to run off to their PlayStation or whatever. So sit down and talk. But rather than rush to fix it, which is what we all tend to want to do, ask, what's on your mind? What's been bothering you? And then when they answer, listen and repeat back to them what they've said. So you've just told me that you're quite worried about Grandma. Don't rush to say Grandma will be fine. Just say, okay, so you're worried about Grandma. What else is worrying you at the moment? And gather what is worrying them. We know from research that often we have 6 or 7 things in our heads that are worrying us at any one time. We'll offer the one that is safest to offer first. So the one that, if you like, it feels socially acceptable. So worrying about Grandma is socially acceptable. So you're going to say that first. And if you rush to say, oh no, Grandma will be fine, then you've shut the conversation down. So instead of doing that, say, all right, so you're worried about Grandma. Is there anything else that's on your mind? And there may be nothing. That's fine if there isn't, but there may be other things. And so listen and gather. Gather without fixing. Gather just by acknowledging. And if you can, use something called empathy. Now, again, empathy is probably something all of you are very aware of. Empathy is about acknowledging what it might feel like to feel like that. Not saying I feel like that too. That's sympathy. Now, sympathy shifts the focus of a conversation from the person who's talking to you as a listener. And you need to try and avoid that, because you want to encourage people to say, I'm listening to you. At this moment, you are the important person, not me. So trying to say things like, that sounds like that's really difficult. Gosh, I didn't know that you felt that strongly about that. I can't begin to imagine how you've been managing that. Those kind of questions that recognise the emotional intensity of what's going on. Now, for you, some of the things that your children might say might seem really quite banal and stupid or a bit simple, but actually for them, they're real. And it's important to acknowledge them as real to them. So ask and gather and use empathy. And then, in a sense, encourage them to say, he's talking to me about this, have you talked to anybody else about it? And has it helped? And would it help? Would it help for you to talk a bit more? Would it help if we made some time later on today or at the weekend to sit down and have a conversation? Would it help to talk? And most people will actually say, yes, it does. And they will say, yes, actually, it's really useful to talk. And we know again from research that if you talk about something, get it out from inside your head and get it out into, if you like, the world, often it diminishes the intensity of what you're feeling and the anxiety and the fear and possibly the anger that goes with it. But it also gives you a chance to deal with it and deal with it in a constructive and positive way. So talk. And then actually, rather than trying to fix your children, ask them, what do you think might help you? Because this is all about helping them to learn what would help them as individuals to find ways through things. What would help you? What do you think you could do that would help you with this? And listen, and if it's a good idea, then help them to do it. But also by listening to what they think will help you to devise the support that they need. So ask them what they think would help, and then offer what you think you can do, which may be more listening and more talking and a bit more family time, perhaps sitting around at lunchtime or at tea time having a meal together, and keeping that focus on talking and sharing and sharing stories and listening to each other. But also it may be that you're quite worried about some of the intensity of the emotions that your children are expressing, in which case you might want to offer them the opportunity to talk to someone professional about it. Don't fix it yourself. Even if you are the most expert counsellor, you cannot fix your own children or your family. You do need to get other people to help you. And that's where you might want to talk to your class teacher, or where you might actually want to talk to the GP, or you may want to find a trusted friend, another trusted adult friend, and say, what do you think? There is a whole host of resources out there to help support children, particularly at this time, because we know that COVID has unsettled so many. And at the end of this video, I'm going to put a slide with some of those resources so that you can look at some of them, perhaps with your children. Some of them you might want to make contact without them. So as I come to an end, I just want to say that, yes, this has been a difficult 12 months, and we're not completely out of the woods yet. But children are amazing. And actually, in many ways, I think we need to learn from them as much as we learn, as much as we teach them. But also, I want to say that faith can play a part in all of this. That idea that there is a loving Creator God holding everything in tension, that there is somewhere outside ourselves that we can go to, that who we can pray to, who can hear the innermost fears of our hearts, is something that, again, evidence shows helps our mental health. We are body and mind, but we are also spirit. And that element of us that is spirit is the very essence of who we are as human beings. So who I am as Susan, and who your children are as themselves. So encourage that pause and that ponder and that prayer bit. The prayer doesn't need to be articulate or theologically sound. It doesn't even need to have words, but just that sense of sitting and being and resting in God's love is a therapeutic and often helpful thing for children and adults alike. I hope that this video has been interesting and useful, given you a few tips. But what I really want to encourage you is to keep going. The children that I am involved with at school are truly amazing and wonderful human beings who have so much potential. And I thank God for them every day. And I thank God for life. And even though we've endured some challenging times, life is for living, and life in all its fullness is what faith and mental well-being offers all of us. Thank you for listening.